If you've wandered through one of the Nether's soul sand valleys, you've likely encountered the large fossils found there. But there's something very odd about Nether fossils. While you can find both skulls and ribcages as fossils in the Overworld, you will only find ribcages in the Nether. And while Overworld fossils will often have blocks replaced with coal or diamonds, they still appear to be mostly complete. But in the Nether, you only find partial ribcages, sometimes even just an individual rib. Most theories claim these fossils came from ancient monsters, but as a peaceful mode player who never sees hostile mobs, I argue that there is another explanation. But there are two questions we should consider first. One, why do Nether fossils only consist of ribs and rib cages with no skulls? And two, why are Nether fossils only found in the soul sand valleys? For that first question, I'm only emphasizing the absence of skulls because there are skulls among the Overworld fossils. As I've outlined in previous videos, I believe the piglins and ancient builders used bone meal to artificially grow the forests of huge fungi we see in the current Nether. Obviously, that would require a lot of bone meal. If the skeletal remains we know as the Nether fossils were present back then, the piglins and builders could have harvested some of the blocks to craft bone meal. Collecting the bone blocks from skulls may have been easier or more efficient than collecting the blocks from the rib cages. That would explain why we can't find any fossil skulls in the Nether. But then, why do we find so many partial rib cages instead of intact rib cages? This could simply be from the fossils breaking down with the passage of time. It's also possible the piglins and builders only collected as many blocks as they needed from the fossils and left the rest. Yet another possibility is that both groups, the piglins and builders, realized their efforts to counteract the pollution from netherite mining and interdimensional energy contamination were in vain, and thus quit gathering bone meal in the middle of breaking down the various fossils. But any one of these possibilities still leaves us with the second question: why are the Nether fossils only found in the soul sand valleys? And when you think about it, isn't Soul Sand Valley a bit of a misnomer? After all, it's not just soul sand you find there. You can also find soul soil, and a lot of it. But was that always the case? The Block of the Week article for Soul Soil indicates that soul soil is very similar to soul sand. As the article says, they both have similar colors and emit the same blue flame when lit on fire. But the most interesting point the article makes is that you can turn soul sand into soul soil. The process involves first using the soul sand to make a campfire, and then breaking the campfire without silk touch. This will cause the campfire to drop soul soil. The article says this is because the ash from the fire fertilized the sand, so then soul soil is merely soul sand that has been fertilized. This could be another explanation for why there are only partial fossils left in the Nether. The rest of the creature's remains broke down and fertilized the surrounding soul sand, turning it into soul soil. So then, naturally occurring soul soil is just soul sand that's been enriched with the decomposed remains of the creatures that used to live in the Nether's soul sand valleys. But there's something about that explanation that doesn't quite fit. While animal remains can be used to fertilize the ground, such as when you use bones from salmon to make bone meal for growing crops, a campfire's ash would result from the sticks, logs, and charcoal or coal that were used to craft it. While the coal could be from either animal or plant sources, the rest of those materials are from plants. You won't find naturally generating plants in any part of the Nether today, and modern soul sand valleys look like barren wastelands, with only the occasional tuft of crimson roots. But if the soul sand valleys had always been so devoid of life, then why did the creatures who left behind these fossils travel here? The Around the Block article for the Soul Sand Valley indicates that it wasn't always so barren. While I believe Minecraft does on occasion use an unreliable narrator, I'm inclined to believe this point about the ancient Soul Sand Valleys. In a previous video, I highlighted the fact that there appear to be some major gaps in the Nether's food chain. While there are decomposers and consumers, there don't appear to be any producers or apex predators. The producers we're most commonly accustomed to are green plants like trees and bamboo. However, those both require light to grow, and there really isn't much light in the Nether. There is dim ambient light everywhere, which resembles light level 8, but most Minecraft plants require a level of at least 9 to grow. With that being said, there are still light sources in the Nether. Lava is one of the brightest light sources in the game at light level 15, and there's plenty of it in the Nether. However, lava also has a tendency to catch things on fire. Plants and fire usually don't mix very well, at least not for the plant. However, there are Minecraft plants that grow without light. While plants like bamboo, sweet berries, and wheat require a light level of at least 9 to grow, sugarcane, cactus, and chorus trees are able to grow without light. In fact, both sugarcane and cactus can be grown on sand without light. So why couldn't there have been nether plants that grew in soul sand with no additional light? Of course, sugarcane and cactus may be able to grow without light, simply because it would make farming them more annoying if they required light. But chorus trees are from the end, where there is also a dim ambient light just like the Nether. So it's not unreasonable to think that the Nether used to have plants which could tolerate the low light level similar to chorus trees. Were the ancient Nether's soul sand valleys filled with fields of the Nether's equivalent of sugarcane or cactus? And as those plants died off, did their decomposing remains fertilize some of the soul sand, converting it into soul soil? However, even if there never were any plants in the Nether, there still could have been producers, and they might even be in the Nether today. In the real world, bacteria in hydrothermal vents produce energy through a process called chemosynthesis. Tube worms are able to use the carbon fixed by the bacteria for food, or animals like yeti crabs may consume the chemosynthetic bacteria. While 1.17 did add a spyglass to see things far away, we don't exactly have a microscope to view very tiny things like bacteria. So it's possible that the Nether could be filled with chemosynthetic bacteria. We just have no way to detect them. Of course, as far as in-game evidence goes, chemosynthetic bacteria don't seem as likely as there being plants in the ancient Nether similar to chorus trees, but I still think it's a neat idea. In fact, some real-world tube worms have red plumes, so a mob modeled after them would fit in with the rest of the red Nether. On a related note, the sparse white hairs on striders do resemble the fake hairs that yeti crabs use to cultivate the bacteria they feed on. Does that mean striders could have fed on chemosynthetic bacteria? There are even single white pixels on a strider's skin, which could be places where additional hair fell out. If striders used to feed on chemosynthetic bacteria, but then they couldn't gather as much because some of their hair fell out from radiation poisoning, that could provide an alternative explanation for why they now feed exclusively on warped fungus. They can no longer gather as much chemosynthetic bacteria as they need to feed themselves. With all this in mind, I see two possibilities for the Nether fossils. Possibility number 1, they are from large herbivores similar to elephants, or pandas if we're referring to mobs currently in Minecraft. As I highlighted in my video about the piglins mining all of the netherite from the Nether, mining can lead to pollution of the local environment. And as I explained in my video about warped fungus, I believe that interdimensional energy pollution from using end portals in the Nether changed some of the crimson fungi into warped fungi. Since both the fog and fire in soul sand valleys are cyan like warped fungus, I believe these areas were also greatly impacted by the interdimensional energy pollution. So then, pollution from netherite mining, as well as interdimensional energy contamination, could have destroyed most or all of the ancient Nether's plant life. And when those plants died, they fertilized the soul sand, turning some of it into soul soil. With their food source completely gone, any herbivores living in the Nether would have starved, and eventually were driven to extinction. Their remains may have also helped to convert some soul sand into soul soil. Possibility number 2, the fossils are from apex predators, who fed on hoglins, striders, or other nether mobs which are also currently extinct. As I pointed out in my video about hoglins avoiding warped fungi, apex predators are particularly vulnerable to pollution because of biomagnification. The interdimensional energy changed the color of warped fungi from red to cyan, and striders have discolored and peeling skin from eating the warped fungi. So if apex predators ate enough striders or other poisoned nether mobs, they may have died as a result of interdimensional energy exposure. Of course, these two possibilities aren't mutually exclusive. The only nether fossils we have are ribs and ribcages of varying sizes, so it's possible the fossils were from different kinds of mobs. But if all of this devastation occurred in the Nether as the result of interdimensional energy pollution, Why does the overworld seem to have a thriving ecosystem? After all, if the uneven bedrock in the Nether is from bedrock portals, wouldn't the uneven bedrock in the overworld also be from bedrock portals? Even if that isn't the case, shouldn't the end portals found in strongholds be emitting dangerous amounts of interdimensional energy once they're activated? Similar to how the 1.16 update added warped fungi with a color similar to the particles found in end portals, the 1.19 update added a block to the overworld which also resembles the end portal. Sculk. Once I have the video about Sculk ready, I'll add it to this end screen. Until next time, take care.